Hey, what's going on, everybody? Welcome back to the channel. Today we got on the lake and it was like 72 degrees as far as the water temperature goes. So I know that a lot of the fish that we're spawning are starting to move out onto some of the offshore structure. And to me, there's no better post-spawn presentation to find those little sweet spots offshore on the structure than the old ball and chain, the Carolina rig. This is a time-tested technique that a lot of people hate, honestly. I don't get it personally because I love the Carolina rig, but a lot of people think it's really boring because you're just dragging it on the bottom. But to me, being able to feel every single little rock, every little shell, I absolutely love it, because when you go from that soft bottom to that hard bottom, you know you're about to get a bite. But anyways, today in this video, I wanted to share with you some of the big mistakes that I see people make when fishing a Carolina rig and how to fix those mistakes to make you a better sea rig angler. So let's get right to it. All right, so the first big mistake that I see people make when fishing a Carolina rig has to do with the main line that they're using. Okay, this is a technique that is grinding on the bottom, and I see so many people using 12-pound test or even a 10-pound test sometimes, and really even 15-pound test is too light of a main line for a Carolina rig under most circumstances. I like to use real heavy line for fishing a Carolina rig, and the reason for that is it's always in contact with hard bottom. You're fishing this on the bottom, you're trying to find those little hard spots, and when you have light line, that line is just going to get chewed up super fast and you're going to break off a lot. So I end up using 20-pound test Seagar Abrazex. Sometimes they even go up to like 22 or 25-pound test fluorocarbon. If it's really, maybe there's some like zebra mussels or something like that. If it's really abrasive, I'll go up. But that is the biggest mistake that I see people make, or one of the big mistakes is using too light of line. And on that note, I also don't use the same pound test of the same line for my leader as I do with the main line. I use a heavy main line, but then attach a lighter fluorocarbon leader, like 12-pound test or 15-pound test gold label fluorocarbon as my leader. So you can still use lighter line if you feel like the fish are a little bit line shy, but the light line is definitely not something you want to use for your main line where it's dragging on the bottom. All right, so the next big mistake that I see people make is not knowing how long to make their leader on a Carolina rig, and this is something that I struggled with early on too. I always used to use kind of a standard length leader, somewhere around the like 18 to 24 inch range. But over time I realized that water clarity had a lot to do with how long or how short the leader needed to be. And so I'll give you some examples. Really the basic rule for me is, like, if it's clear water, I want as much distance between the weight and the bait as possible. Okay, so ultra clear water, if I'm going smallmouth fishing up north, I'll sometimes use 4 or 5 foot leaders with my Carolina rig. They're harder to cast, but they give a more subtle gliding presentation, more natural presentation, and also the weight is further away from the bait, so it just looks overall more natural in that clear water. However, in dirtier water, you want to shorten up your leader, because I think that a lot of the attraction of a Carolina rig in dirty water is that sound, and the sound grinding on the bottom of the weight grinding on the bottom and hitting that bead is really important. And so the fish hear that, they come to inspect in that dirty water, and then when they get close, I want that weight or that bait to be as close to weight as possible. So I'll shorten it up to, like, sometimes even as short as 12 inches long, but usually around that 18-inch range. It seems to be kind of standard for the dirtier water. I actually made this mistake, and it cost me probably about $75,000 at Clarksdale Lake years ago in a BFL regional. I was doing really well, throwing a Carolina rig the first 2 days. I was in the top 5 or something, I think. And the final day, I ended up, finding my spot, had a bunch of mud. It was just muddy water. We had a big rain and that mud line came through, and the fish were still biting. But what I didn't realize at the time is that they were biting the weight instead of the bait, and my leader was still too long, or still as long as it was the first 2 days when the water was clearer. The fish would eat the weight instead of the bait, and I'd ended up losing a ton of fish that day. I only brought in one fish that was hooked in the side. So it is a big mistake not to use the right leader length. All right guys, so the next mistake has to do with the rod that you're using. With a Carolina rig, I think it's really important to use a longer rod that has a good solid backbone and a fast action. So I see a lot of people fish, you know, like a 7-foot medium heavy rod. Okay, that would be great for normal Texas rig fishing, you know, or fishing a small jig or something like that. But for a Carolina rig, you want a long rod. This right here is the Carolina rig rod from Fitzgerald. It's a 7.5 heavy action rod. And I also have a 7.6 medium heavy all-purpose series rod that I previously was my Carolina rig rod. I still use it as a Carolina rig rod. But the whole point of having a longer rod is, number one, it allows for a longer cast. I mean, you're having to make these big, wide lob casts with the Carolina rig because the rig itself is, you know, very long. And then another thing that's really important is setting the hook and getting the slack out. And with a longer rod, you just get way more leverage and you're able to take up way more slack than with a shorter rod. And that's super, super important with a Carolina rig. All right, so the last big mistake that I see people make with a Carolina rig all the time has to do with the hook set. The hook set is super critical with a Carolina rig because there is so much possibility of slack in the line with a Carolina rig between the stretch that you already have in the fluorocarbon and also the leader length that you have that can put a lot of slack in the line when the fish hits. It's really important to set the hook right. And really the wrong way, the mistake that I see people make is that they set the hook up, you know, like a traditional Texas rig or a jig or something like that. That's really not the way you want to do it. The way you want to do it, I'm going to try to get a bite here because I'm like right in this hard spot. I don't know if I'm going to be able to get a bite. But anyways, the way that you want to set the hook is once you feel the bite, you maybe feel that tap or maybe it got mushy for a second. You want to reel until you feel pressure of the fish, and then you want to do a side sweeping hook set like that. You don't want to just do a snap hook set. It's just all about getting slack out of that line and pulling it to the side. So big mistake is setting the hook up and setting the hook too fast. You've really got to get the slack out of the line, feel that fish before you set the hook. That is going to allow you to get way more fish in the boat. So anyways, guys, hopefully these mistakes that I've seen people make, and I've made all of them myself, help you kind of fix those mistakes that you're making already and make you a better Carolina rig fisherman. It is a great technique. So thank you guys so much for watching. Make sure you like, share, subscribe. If you have any questions at all, drop a comment below. And other than that, I'm going to see you out on the water. Trust the process, everybody.